Read it exactly, my husband whispered while our dead son's face filled the screen above the Franklin Falls High School stage. Beside Mason's photograph were the words "One bad choice that you drove." 300 people were watching his former soccer coach describe him as a drunk driver. Grant pressed a folded statement into my hand and closed my fingers around it. Our 16-year-old daughter, Lila, waited beside the podium to speak about her brother. My nephew Owen sat at the other end of the front row with one wrist braced against his chest. According to the program, he was the brave passenger who had tried to take Mason's keys. 6 days earlier, Mason had died in a silver loaner SUV owned by Grant's dealership. Owen and their friend Ivy Chen survived. No investigator had told me who drove. Grant had, first in a hospital consultation room and then every time I asked whether he was certain. I had repeated his answer to my sister, the school principal, and Ivy's mother because grief made certainty feel like evidence. Now I opened the page he expected me to read. It said Mason took the vehicle after drinking, Owen tried to stop him, and I had ignored warning signs at home. It ended by announcing the Mason Ward Safe Choices Fund for Ivy's recovery, and asking the audience to repeat, "We honor the truth, even when it hurts." I had never seen the warning signs the page assigned me. I had never agreed to make our son the sole author of the crash. "This isn't mine," I said. Grant kept smiling toward the stage. "It needs to be the family's account." "Is it true? It keeps Owen from losing his future, it keeps the dealership open, and it puts real money behind Ivy." "That wasn't my question," the coach finished. Scattered applause rose through the gym. Dana Ellis, the principal, stepped into the aisle and motioned me toward the microphone. Grant gripped my forearm beneath the program. "If you refuse, the fund disappears. Mara is counting on it." I could read a lie, detonate my son's memorial before knowing the truth, or leave the false sentence glowing over his face. I asked Dana for 10 minutes. It was my first mistake. The livestream camera's red light remained fixed on our row while Dana sent the band forward. Programs bearing Grant's dealership logo lay open across hundreds of laps. He had placed the lie in the screen, the printed order, and the pauses of the event. Even our hesitation could be presented as grief instead of refusal. I thought a private pause could separate grief from fact. Instead, Grant walked on stage and told the audience that a mother's courage sometimes needed time. The screen changed to a photograph of Owen in a hospital corridor captioned, "He tried to take the keys." Owen made a sound beside me. "Did you?" I asked. "Aunt Camille, I need to tell you," Grant returned before he finished and crouched in front of him. "You're overstimulated. Remember what your counselor said. She said I could leave. And abandon Mason's service?" Grant asked it gently enough to sound like concern. Owen went still. He had lived with us on and off since Grant's younger brother died 8 years earlier. Grant paid part of his tuition, co-signed his apartment, and gave him a job washing cars at Ward Motors. I wanted to believe he was protecting the last piece of his brother. Then Marachan hurried down the aisle in the same gray cardigan she had worn at the hospital. Ivy was not with her. Mara took both my hands. "Please read it. Whatever happened, don't make him pull the help." Grant had promised to advance money for the portion of Ivy's rehabilitation and missed semester that insurance might not cover, but only if the families presented what he called one responsible account. Nothing was signed. Mara had heard a grieving father offer help and believed gratitude required agreement. "You conditioned her care on my statement?" I asked. Grant told Mara that their conversation was private. "So was the confession you wrote for me." The jazz band played louder while people turned toward us. Grant smiled at anyone who looked. Owen stood, caught himself against the chair and said, "I was in the driver's seat." Grant's expression emptied. Mara tightened her hold on my hands. I asked Owen to repeat it. Grant stepped between us. He said Owen had awakened in different rooms, medicated and confused, and had already given conflicting accounts. "Do investigators know you wrote mine?" I asked. The music stopped. On stage, Lila lifted her tribute. The first line appeared on the teleprompter. "My brother made a terrible choice, but he was more than his last night." Lila looked at the words, then at me. Grant had not prepared one lie. He had built a memorial in which every person Mason loved would repeat a different piece of it. I reached the stage before Lila spoke and covered the microphone with my hand. "The family remarks need to be corrected," I said while it was still live. A murmur moved through the bleachers. Grant came up the opposite stairs and told everyone I was overwhelmed. He tried to steer me away. I stayed. The part saying Mason drove has not been confirmed. Dana announced another musical selection and led us into the equipment office behind the gym. It smelled of rubber mats and floor wax. Lila came with me. Owen followed despite Grant ordering him to wait outside. Mara blocked the door from closing completely. Grant said the vehicle evidence would take time. Mason had alcohol in his blood, and Owen's memory was unreliable. Then he moved from facts to calculation. The loaner SUV had left Ward Motors using an employee access code. If Owen, a dealership employee, drove it, the insurer could dispute coverage and the town could suspend a fleet service contract supporting 42 jobs. If Mason took it, Grant said, the dealership became another victim. And our son becomes a drunk thief, I said. Our son is dead. Lila recoiled. Grant closed his eyes but did not take it back. He cannot be helped by a cleaner version. The living can. Owen stepped toward him. Grant reminded him of tuition, rent, work, and the home he had been given after his father died. None sounded like a threat until Grant added, I am the only reason you have not lost everything. He told Lila to take Owen into the hallway and help him rehearse the sentence about trying to seize Mason's keys. Lila looked from the torn edge of her tribute to Owen's face. Did you ask him if that happened? Grant said this was not her burden. Then stop putting it on my teleprompter, she replied. She stayed beside me, and Owen remained in the room. Owen answered, You're the reason I haven't told Aunt Camille. I wanted that sentence to clear Mason so badly that I made my second mistake. I told Dana I would return to the gym and state only that Mason had been a passenger. I would not accuse Owen or discuss the investigation. The service could continue without a false driver. That works, Owen said. Grant refused immediately. He had already sent my prepared statement to the dealership's insurance contact and the town purchasing director as the Ward family's public acceptance of responsibility. My voice was not legal proof, but it would make his account appear united and voluntary. A correction would expose that he had spoken for me before I knew there was a dispute. Dana asked why a school memorial had become part of a fleet contract conversation. Grant accused her of objecting only after accepting his donation. Their argument ended when Ivy Chan appeared in the doorway on aluminum crutches, a hospital band still around one wrist. Mara said she was supposed to be home. You took my phone and came here to let them blame Mason, Ivy replied. Then she looked at me. Mason wasn't driving, Mrs. Ward. Relief moved through me so fast that I hated myself for feeling it in front of her. Thank you. That is all I'm correcting. No, Ivy said. It isn't all. Mason had taken the key fob from a hook in Grant's office during an employee bonfire. Owen tried to return it. Mason mocked him, then placed it in his hand because Owen knew how to open the gate. Owen drove. Mason sat in front and urged him to go faster on the river road. Ivy sat behind them and repeatedly asked them to stop. There isn't one clean person in that car, she said. Owen drove. Mason pushed. I went with them and lied to my mom about where we were going. Owen admitted Ivy had asked to get out. He slowed once, Mason called him afraid, and he accelerated again. She said nothing graphic about the crash. The last clear moment she remembered was all three of them shouting different instructions. My plan to announce Mason's innocence collapsed. He was not the driver Grant described, but he had helped create the danger. Shifting every ounce of blame onto Owen would repeat Grant's choice in reverse. Lila asked whether Mason had called anyone. Then she answered herself. He had called her from the dealership lot, bragged that they were taking one of the new SUVs, and made her promise not to tell me. She had laughed because she thought he was showing off. Grant told her after the crash that mentioning the call would make people say she helped steal the car. I was protecting you from needless guilt, he said. Lila tore her tribute in half. You put the guilt in my speech. Dana offered to end the live stream and dismiss the crowd. Grant objected that silence would feed rumors. He offered to make Ivy's assistance unconditional if everyone returned to the stage, and used the words accident and shared responsibility without naming the driver. Mara nearly accepted. Then she asked why the programs and screen named Mason alone if shared responsibility was sufficient now. Grant had no answer. Owen gave it for him. Uncle Grant got to me before the first interview. He said dead boys don't lose futures, but I could. Grant struck the metal cabinet with his palm. Everyone jumped. I was trying to keep another family from burying a son. Owen stepped closer. You were deciding which son the town was allowed to remember. Dana ended the live stream. but the first 27 minutes already existed and 300 witnesses were waiting outside. Grant proposed that she postpone the family remarks while leaving Mason's accusation on the screen. "Turn it off," I said. Dana signaled the technician. Mason's face and the words he drove vanished, leaving a black rectangle above the stage. That changed the room more than another speech. Grant emerged from the equipment office, walked directly to the podium, and protected the story before he protected any of us. He told the audience grief had created confusion, but Ward Motors still believed in responsibility. Then he unfolded a second copy of my statement. "Camille asked me to read this for her," he began. "As Mason's mother, I knew he had been struggling. Stop," I called from the aisle. Grant continued. Lila climbed the steps and pulled the page down. He held on and it tore between them. The audience inhaled as one body. Dana cut the microphone. Grant accused her of humiliating a grieving father. She answered that he had attributed a statement to a parent who had not written it. The town purchasing director stood and headed toward the exit. Grant followed him 2 steps. "Rob, this has nothing to do with the fleet bid." "Then you should not have placed our seal on the invitation," the man replied. It was not a verdict, only the first practical consequence Grant could not control. He turned on me. 42 families may pay because you need Mason to look perfect." The accusation hurt because minutes earlier I had planned to call Mason innocent. I walked onto the stage. Dana restored one microphone and asked whether the printed statement was mine. "No." Grant warned me not to discuss an open investigation. I gave the room only what the event made necessary. I did not write that confession. I did not authorize my husband to send it. We have not been told Mason was driving. The survivors deserve to speak for themselves, and my son does not become innocent because he died. But he will not be assigned every choice because he cannot answer. The witnesses did not unite behind me. One man shouted that families always protected their own. Grant's sister walked out with several dealership employees. Others stayed silent because their jobs depended on the business he said I had endangered. I was relieved there was no applause. It would have turned a difficult truth into another performance. Celia, one of Grant's service advisors, stood near the aisle and asked whether I understood what a frozen contract could do to her family. Before I could answer, Mason's coach said the employees had not written my confession either. Celia snapped that principals were cheaper for people whose paychecks were safe. Neither of them changed sides. They simply made the cost audible. Grant announced that without a united family statement, Ward Motors could not administer the recovery fund. Mara made a broken sound behind me. Ivy came forward on her crutches. "Keep it," she said. "You don't get to buy which seat I remember." Grant called her a traumatized teenager although she was 19. Mara stepped between them. "You called her an adult when you wanted her agreement." She changed sides not because the bills disappeared, but because Grant finally used on Ivy the voice he had used on her. Owen came to the stage. I told him he could wait. He did not owe the gym a confession, and speaking there could carry consequences he had not considered. Grant seized on my warning and urged him to handle things properly. Owen laughed once. Properly was 6 days ago. He took the microphone and said only, "I was driving. Mason pushed me to take the car. Ivy told us to stop. I didn't. Uncle Grant told me dead boys don't lose futures." Grant rushed up the steps. Dana and the soccer coach moved between them. Grant shouted that Owen was confused and determined to destroy the man who had raised him. Owen's face folded because Grant had raised him in real ways. Love was not absent, that was why the leverage worked. "You did raise me," Owen said. "That's why I believed you when you said lying was the only way to survive." Lila stood beside me holding half the confession and asked whether she had to read anything. "No." Dana told the audience the memorial would continue without the road safety presentation, dealership branding, or family accountability statement. Anyone could leave. Nearly a third did. The remaining people heard the jazz band play Mason's favorite song with no caption above it. His coach remembered him tutoring freshmen and once hiding the goalkeeper's shoes. Ivy did not speak. Owen sat beside Mara instead of Grant. Lila told one story about Mason crossing town in a storm to bring her a calculator. She did not call him safe or reckless. She said he came because she asked. Afterward, people formed separate circles rather than one comforting line. Some hugged Grant. Some demanded answers from me. A dealership employee begged me not to make 42 families pay for our tragedy. I said I did not want that. She replied that wanting would not matter. Mara asked whether I would still help Ivy. I said yes, but never in exchange for a story and never through a fund Grant controlled. She did not thank me. She asked me to put it in writing. Grant waited beneath the blank screen until the gym was almost empty. Owen will be charged, the contract will freeze, and Mason will still be dead, he said. Now Lila gets to remember her mother used his memorial to say he helped cause it. You used it first. I was saving what remained. The parts you chose. He asked whether I would have sacrificed Mason's reputation to protect Owen and his employees. I admitted I did not know what I might have chosen if the boys' places were reversed. But I would not put the decision in your mouth and call it ours. Grant asked Lila to leave with him. She took my hand. He walked out through the loading doors. The ceremonial check for the Mason Ward Safe Choices Fund remained on an easel. Someone turned it around so its blank white back faced the room. The truth became slower after the memorial, and less useful to anyone who wanted one villain. The vehicle information and witness accounts confirmed Owen had been driving. They also confirmed Mason took the key, pressured Owen to open the gate, and urged him onward after Ivy asked them to stop. Grant had reached Owen before his first full interview and repeatedly described Mason as the driver. Owen obtained his own attorney, accepted responsibility through an ordinary court process, lost his license for a long period, and entered restitution and community service. He was neither destroyed nor rescued. Ward Motors did not disappear overnight. The town paused its fleet bid, the insurer disputed part of the claim, and Grant's lender required outside supervision. Months later he sold a controlling interest to a regional dealer that kept the service department open, but removed him from daily management. Some employees stayed, 2 left before the sale. My correction had not protected every innocent worker from uncertainty. That cost remained real even though Grant created the choice that exposed it. Mara and I established assistance for Ivy through a hospital-managed account carrying her name. It required no public statement and gave neither Grant nor me control over how she described the crash. Mara rejected a dealership check labeled Community Restoration and made Grant reissue it with only Ivy's account number. The money remained useful after the credit was removed. My marriage did not. Grant believed he had made the least destructive choice available. I could not live with a man who treated our dead son as a convenient witness. We separated before winter and handled the practical end without turning it into another public campaign. Lila did not simply join my side because she left the gym holding my hand. She spoke to Grant when she chose and blamed herself for laughing during Mason's call. I kept telling her the call caused nothing until Ivy corrected me at our kitchen table. It mattered, she said. It just wasn't the steering wheel. That was harder than absolution and kinder than blame. Lila had participated in a secret without understanding its weight. She could learn from it without becoming responsible for her brother's death. Owen stayed with his maternal aunt while his case moved forward. He wrote me twice apologizing, then asked whether telling the truth had been worth losing his family. I first answered that he should not borrow my judgment after refusing Grant's. The sentence sounded wise and let me avoid him. I called the next day. Owen said he loved Mason and resented him, loved Grant and feared him. I did not make those feelings match. I also did not offer him Mason's place or exile him for surviving. We agreed he could call, I might not always answer, and neither of us would use Lila as a messenger. When we met at a diner 3 weeks later, Owen arrived by bus and chose a booth facing the door. I almost told him Mason would have forgiven him, then stopped. Mason was no longer available to give either of us the answer we wanted. Owen asked whether he was allowed to miss someone whose worst decision had helped ruin his life. I said I had been asking the same question about Grant. We finished our coffee without resolving it, and Owen paid for his own cup. Franklin Falls High then had to decide what to do with donations collected before the memorial. Several donors wanted the money used but no longer trusted the fund Grant designed. Mara suggested transportation vouchers for students who needed a safe ride, with no child's photograph attached. Lila resisted until she saw Grant's original fund application. Beneath Mason's picture it said he drove so others would choose better. He made Mason the warning label, she said. The school returned donations to anyone who requested them and placed the rest in an independently managed ride program named Home Route. No Ward family member controlled it. On the first Friday it operated, Mara invited me to the school parking lot. There was no photographer or dedication. 6 volunteer drivers stood beside a folding table, while a counselor explained that students could request a ride without supplying a public reason. Ivy checked phone numbers at the table. She walked without crutches but had chosen to repeat the semester rather than rush back. Lila entered requests into a laptop. Owen arrived by city bus because his service plan allowed him to help dispatch rides but not travel with students. When Grant's truck appeared at the edge of the lot, Owen froze. Grant watched for a few seconds then drove away. I could not tell whether it was restraint, rejection, or surveillance, and I did not invent an answer for Owen. I handed him a box of blank route cards. He asked Lila where she wanted them. She pointed to the corner without looking up. It was not forgiveness, but it was a task. Near sunset, the last student called for a ride from a party outside town. The counselor assigned a driver. Lila closed the laptop and asked to ride home with me instead of Grant. I did not treat the question as a verdict on her father. I folded the table, took out my keys, and carried them to the car. Lila placed them in the cup holder rather than reaching for the ignition. "You're driving," she said. "I know." We waited until Owen's bus pulled away and Mara's taillights disappeared at the corner. Then I started the car. There was no photograph of Mason on the ride cards, no sentence explaining the worst night of his life, and no promise that truth had repaired us. His absence rode home with us anyway. At the first light, Lila turned down the radio. "If I ever ask you to cover for me, don't." The light changed. I told her I would come get her from anywhere at any hour, but I would not make somebody else carry her choice. She nodded. We drove home with the keys where both of us could see them.